Rider's range is at a Kimber TLE threaded 4 suppressor. So when you put all that together, it's Kimber TLE TFS. You can also get this model with a rail, which makes it a Kimber TLE RL TFS. We aren't going to go there. When Dan Wesson came out with their Vigil 9mm, also threaded for suppressor, I was intrigued. So we picked up a Vigil, and Rider's range is going to put the two side by side. Is there a winner? Stay tuned to the end and let's find out. I want to thank Ann Arbor Arms for their support of Rider's range. Ann Arbor Arms is a 5-star range and training facility. They can be found at AnnArborArms.com. These guns have a lot in common, but they're also different in a couple of ways. Let's start with the sights on these. The Kimber has 3-dot sights. Oh, by the way, both of these guns are set up with the sights for suppressors. The Kimber has suppressor height sights, 3-dot, but these are tritium glow-in-the-dark type sights. The Vigil, on the other hand, has an Ameriglow high-def front sight and a plain black serrated rear sight. So there's a difference in the sight combinations between these two. You still have a fair amount of sight definition between the front sight and the rear sight on both of these guns, which provides for some both quick as well as accurate shooting. And very pleased with how these sights work on both guns. Now, I prefer a black rear sight with a high def front sight, but I haven't had any issue shooting the Kimber with the sights that they come on. Both of these have traditional slide profiles. There is another difference though as you get down into the slide. The Kimber has a full-length guide rod, while the Dan Wesson is more traditional in configuration. The Kimber also has front cocking serrations. Of course, they both have rear cocking serrations. The thumb safeties are very similar. The magazine releases are very similar. The grip safeties are very similar. A lot of similarities between these guns. Neither one reaches out and screams at you as to what kind of gun it is. There's a nice subtle Vigil on the side of the Dan Wesson. That's all you're going to find. Kimber, of course, has their Kimber script on it. And this is a custom TLE 2, which means that it is a Series 80 style gun as opposed to a Series 70 style like the Dan Wesson. So I believe this, I may stand corrected on this, but I believe the Kimber has a Swartz type safety in it. Now, we mentioned that the Kimber is all steel, while the Dan Wesson has an aluminum frame. The Kimber comes with G10 grips. The Dan Wesson comes with wooden grips, very nicely styled, with texture in all the right places. A little bit of difference on the front straps. The checkering is a little coarser on the Dan Wesson. I think it's 25 lines per inch. The Kimber is touted as being 30 lines per inch on the front strap. Backs are a little bit different though. The checkering on the back of the Kimber is more coarse than it is on the Dan Wesson, and I think it provides just a little better grip, although both of these have been grippy enough when I've been shooting them. Both have ramped barrels. Both have somewhat of a magwell. The Kimber's magwell is a little bit more beveled than the one in the Dan Wesson. Kimber, you'll also notice, has a mainspring housing that has a hole in it for a lanyard ring, but some people might think that is a nice touch. Triggers on these are almost identical. Again, we've had the Kimber for a while, and again, these guns are unloaded. They've been safety checked. The trigger on the Kimber has got a little bit of take up, extremely short travel, and it's both of these have over travel stops. So as soon as that trigger gets past its brake, which is a very, very crisp, clean brake, trigger stops. Reset on the Kimber is extremely short, and again, a very short, crisp, clean brake at 4 pounds consistently. Dan Wesson Vigil, again, safety checked and empty. Skeletonized trigger with an over travel stop. A little bit of take up, just like the Kimber. Almost no movement, and it's extremely crisp, extremely clean, and again, 4 pounds consistently. These triggers, you put them side by side, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference in a blindfold test. They're both great triggers. I do want to mention one thing about the slide though. The slide takes less effort on the Vigil than it does on the Kimber. Now, I'm not saying it takes a lot of effort, but the the recoil spring in the Kimber seems to be a little bit stouter than it is in the Dan Wesson. You can definitely notice the difference between the two when you put them on the scale. The Kimber comes in at 47 ounces. These are all tested loaded, and again, that's with a magazine with 9 rounds in the mag and 1 extra for the chamber. And I usually test with 124s, but since these guns run much better with 147 grain, that weight is with 10 rounds, 147 grain ammunition. So the Kimber comes in at 47 ounces. The Dan Wesson Vigil comes in at 38.7 ounces. That's a half a pound lighter than the Kimber. You know, I really don't notice that in the shooting either. Speaking of shooting, how well do they do? Well, of course, Riders Range tests all that out. We didn't run an extensive variety of ammunition through this. We don't really through any of our guns. If they work with our standard ammunition, usually 124. In this case, we did shoot it with both 124 and 147. And you'll see the differences here. The 124s shot just a little bit high with both guns, and the grouping is not quite as tight with the 124s. These guns seem to run much better with 147 grain. All testing is done in a 3-inch circle at 15 yards. And again, you can see that the Dan Wesson and the Kimber are both shooting just a little bit high. And 147s, they're both pretty much right on. The groups are just about the same. I'll throw a flyer occasionally, but I can cover everything with a 3-inch circle, with the exception of that flyer. At 15 yards, very, very happy with how both of these guns shoot. Do they ring steel at 50 yards? Well, of course, we're going to test that too, and yes, they do. They can run plates fairly quickly. And even with a suppressor, these guns shoot very well, suppressed and unsuppressed. And even with a can hanging off the end, there's still a little bit of recoil to these, but again, they're 9mm full size, and even that lightweight Dan Wesson is not going to recoil a significant amount. And these have a significantly different manufacturer suggested retail price, but they come out very close when it comes to actually buying the gun. The Kimber TLE threaded for suppressor has an MSRP of $11.95. You can find them regularly for $1,000, give or take. I've found a couple of used ones running in the $900 bracket, give or take. The Dan Wesson Vigil has an MSRP of $13.97, so $200 more than the Kimber, but the going prices right now for a new Dan Wesson Vigil threaded for suppressor is still $1,000 plus or minus. But I haven't found any used Vigils on the market yet. It's still a relatively new gun, and apparently not enough have been out to hit the market used. So what does Riders Range like or not like about these? Well, there's really not much to not like about either of these guns. We'll start with the TLE. Its accuracy is great, particularly with the 147s. It's been a highly reliable gun. I've got probably 500 rounds through this gun so far and haven't had any issues. It does have night sights. Again, if you like that, I don't really prefer the 3-dot sights, but if you do, the Kimber's got them. The trigger on the Kimber, 4 pounds clean. It's a great trigger. The fit and finish on the Kimber is very nice. Again, it's just your plain black all steel gun. Hard to find cons on it. Now, there are of course people who will bash Kimbers, and they'll also bash the fact that they have some MIM parts in them, the metal injection molding. Haven't had anything break on any of the Kimbers I have. And some people will say that the full-length guide rod is a drawback. Again, full length or standard length, I don't have any problem any way you look at it. So again, I really can't find much negative at all about the Kimber. It's a great shooting gun. The Dan Wesson Vigil, accurate also. The tritium high def front sight I really like, along with the black rear sight. The fit and finish on this Dan Wesson is typical of Dan Wesson's. It's black aluminum frame, black slide, very nice finish on it. I like the contour. We didn't mention that earlier. I like the contour on the bottom of the grip frame for the Dan Wesson, just that little bit of rounding. Even though I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time carrying this concealed, that little bit of rounding feels nice in the hand. A plus might very well be the aluminum frame, although some people may consider that a con. This is the second aluminum frame 1911 9mm that we've got. In fact, this would stack up very nicely against the STI Duty 1 Light 5.0 that we showed in the last video. And as far as negatives, there's only one negative I can find on this particular Dan Wesson, and that is that periodically it doesn't lock back on the last round. Doesn't matter if I'm using a Dan Wesson magazine or a Chip McCormick or a Wilson or even a Kimber magazine in it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So which one does Riders Range prefer? They're comparably priced guns when you get to the actual retail online price for them. I like the feel of both of them. The G10 grips on the Kimber are very nice. The wooden grips on the Dan Wesson are also extremely nice. I do like that slightly rounded butt on the Dan Wesson, but I also like the more aggressive checkering on the front strap of the Kimber. The triggers are both identical. The slide works a little easier, as I mentioned, on the Dan Wesson. But you know, I had real high hopes for that Dan Wesson going into it, particularly with my experience with other Dan Wessons. The fact that it's not locking back on that last round is a little bit of a turnoff. However, either gun, for the price, is a good value. You want an aluminum frame gun, obviously you go with the Vigil. You want the heavier steel frame gun, you go with the Kimber. You can't go wrong either way. Riders Range is completely happy with it. So just a quick one on on two Suppressor-Ready 9mm, both great guns. If you like these videos, we certainly appreciate a thumbs up. We've got more coming out in the Great Affordable 1911 series. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when the next video comes out, or to see our complete playlist of videos to come, as well as all the ones that we've published in this series so far. Go to www.ridersrange.com. If you have any comments about these videos or anything else that you'd like to see Riders Range do, please leave them in the comments section or send your comments to info@ridersrange.com. Again, I want to thank you for visiting Riders Range. Kimber TLE, threaded for suppressor, shooting 147 grain Federal. Let's see how it works at 12 yards. And let's see how it works at 25 yards.